Warning: the following reading contains themes and descriptions that some listeners may find disturbing or difficult to hear. Listener discretion is advised. Excitement rang through the small town of Ponyville in anticipation for tomorrow's heart-warming celebration. Once again, the cold breeze carried the smell of burning hickory from the chimneys of nearby homes. At Sugar Cube Corner, the scents of cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla poured from the store. The orders came fast and furious, but like every year, they were able to keep up, if barely. The twinkling of thousands of strands of magical lights in seasonal colors had been wrapped around long strips of garland and strung from house to house, building to building, and pole to pole. The ponies of Ponyville were filled with happiness and good cheer, and were more than happy to share those feelings with others. Save one, Dusty Bin. There were a lot of things in Equestria that stressed Dusty Bin. Work, or lack thereof, was one. A year ago, he was one of Ponyville's lead pest exterminators. The position, however, became moot when Fluttershy intervened and all but put an end to his trade in town. While there was the occasional job that came up, it was hardly enough to pay the bills, so he had taken on another part-time job working retail under a red-maned unicorn named Surprise Bouquet. Surprise was the type of manager who was always looking to go younger, and Dusty suspected, given his advanced age, that he wasn't long for the position. His daughter had just sent word that she'd intended to drop out of college and move into a commune with her art history professor and his other wives. He was a stallion that was twice her age, and from how deep he sounded, was probably on drugs. When he'd attempted to intervene, she quit speaking to him. She did, however, manage to spend the bits he'd sent for tuition on something called cosmic stones that would let her get in touch with her marehood. Currently, though, the thing that stressed Dusty out the most was his wife, Jasmine. Her complaining about their situation while she couldn't be bothered to lift a hoof to help was more the issue. That, and the fact that she tended to go out, and stay out, late. Sometimes, she'd come home with her mane a bit of a mess, and a Cheshire grin slapped across her face. When she did, he'd quake in fear, anger, hurt, and pretty much all other negative emotions one could heap onto a pony. Not that she cared. In his opinion, Jasmine was still as beautiful as the day they'd gotten together. There were several nights he recalled that drunken romp behind the hay bales near the Apple family barn during Nightmare Night all those years ago. It was her idea, and it had led to their daughter's conception and their eventual marriage, much to her and her wealthy father's displeasure. In those early days, she'd show interest in him, but she also never let him forget that she'd hoped for more out of life than to be an exterminator's wife. However, in spite of it all, he still wanted her. Dusty Bin let out a sigh, staring at the display window of the store, naughty and nice. He looked at the mannequins dressed in exotic and sexy lingerie, and imagined his wife modeling the outfit for him. Yet, the thought soon turned sour when it occurred to him that he likely wouldn't be the one who she was modeling for. He remembered the fight that morning over the hat he found hung on the hook by the door. She'd spit the usual insults his way, but something was different. There was a coldness to it, something deeper and more malicious than anything he would have imagined. He'd spent the majority of that day waiting for some lawyer to show up with papers while he was at his part-time job, or some hoodlum to come in and put an end to him. Dusty was so lost in thought that he didn't notice when the pretty young Pegasus approached him until an evil mist of strong, sweet-smelling scents assaulted him. The offending odors burrowed deep into his nose and mouth. It made his eyes water to the point that he was nearly blind as a coughing fit overtook him.
Do you like it? It's called Lust by Rarity,
said the mayor's voice, cutting through the attacking cloud.
The perfect gift for your wife or mayor friend this holiday season. At only 9 bits with free gift wrapping. It's quite the deal.
Dusty took a step away from the perfume-wielding Pegasus. Words formed on the tip of his tongue, but quickly evaporated into another coughing fit until he'd finally expelled the noxious stink from his lungs. He wiped the tears from his eyes and looked at the pony, who was dressed in a revealing red and white outfit that exposed some of the fluffiest chest fuzz he'd ever seen.
No,
He wheezed, stopping for a moment to collect himself.
Excuse me, Miss
Squiggles.
Miss Squiggles. I'm here to pick up a package from Zecora. Do you know where I can find her?
Oh.
She murmured as her mood went from cheerful to slightly hostile in a surprisingly quick fashion.
Well, you can find her near the back of the store. Filthy Rich that has set up a small stall to sell some of her potions and trinkets for the holiday. Between you and me, I don't think she likes me very much. Always glaring at me whenever I go inside and try to talk to the customers, which is why I stay outside.
Squiggles sighed and waved a hoof dismissively.
Well, I won't keep you any longer, as I see you have your own business to attend to. Happy heartwarming. I hope your wife deserves your gift.
The department store was filled with shoppers. Their breath and body heat made it almost unbearable as Dusty attempted to push his way through them. More than once, a couple of the shoppers scuffled, sending him into other shoppers as he tried to avoid the melee. The clerks were ragged, and from what Dusty could tell, were ready to go home. In the dim of the crowd, crying children drowned out the sound of the small band playing heartwarming songs. The odd odors from perfume assassins gave Dusty a headache. Yet, the exterminator persevered and made his way back to Zecora's stall. It was paramount that he get there. When he got there, he was surprised to see just how small of a space they'd given Zecora. To call it a stall was generous. It was simply a tiny table, wedged between display cases of costume jewelry and deeply marked down summerwear. The holiday rush must have gotten to her as well. Zecora wore a look of frustration when he finally made it to her booth.
Hey, I'm sorry I'm late. I was assaulted by a perfume mare and the crowds are out of control,
he said, smiling politely.
I hope no one has given you too hard of a time today.
Zecora smiled in relief as he spoke.
Why, my good friend Dusty Bin has finally arrived. I had started to lose hope that the throngs you had survived.
She chuckled, pointing to the holiday insanity around them.
It hasn't been easy getting to you. I got off work early to avoid the crowds,
Dusty said, who was promptly bumped from behind by a surly stallion.
It seems that I should have left a lot earlier.
I was getting ready to close up shop, so I am happy that you have decided to drop. This year's heartwarming has been particularly vicious, as the ponies this holiday seem to be really ambitious.
She spoke while reaching into one of the sacks of what was left of things she couldn't sell.
The gift for your wife is inside this present. I hope hearth swimming for you this year is pleasant.
Dusty noticed how large, bright, and festive the box was wrapped. Bright red and white stripes ran down the box, and it was flourished with a red bow twinkling from the gold glitter that topped it. Curiously, he opened the box, wondering what it was he had actually bought, having ordered it months ago from Zecora as something that would guarantee the best heartwarming ever. All she required was a lock of his and his wife's hair, and, as she put it in her rhyming way, an open mind. And, of course, as many bits as he could spare. The smell of freshly baked gingerbread slowly drifted out of the box. He stared questioningly at the decorated gingerbread cookie made in the shape of a pony. Even though Dusty didn't particularly like gingerbread too much, he found his stomach start to growl from missing lunch again, while he peered closer to examine the gift for his wife. Its smile stretched from one end to another, made of different colored candies with red gumdrop eyes that seemed to follow him around. It was the biggest cookie he'd ever seen. Heavy, too. Dusty needed both hooves just to hold the box. A small frown crossed his face as he looked at the cookie.
Zecora, how is this cookie going to...
He never finished his sentence as the cookie suddenly began to shift. It slowly sat up and stared at him expectantly. He dropped the box to the table and stared back.
Happy heartwarming,
The gingerbread pony cried in a strange, high-pitched voice. It repeated the greeting several times and stretched out its cookie arms as if asking for a hug. Dusty's shocked face shifted to Zecora, who chuckled quietly. When Dusty had told the zebra about his marital and family woes months ago, he'd thought maybe she would have given him a poultice. Perhaps she'd give him a love potion, so that at least his wife would feel something for him again.
A cookie?
He asked, finding his voice again.
What do I do with a talking cookie?
To get the happiness you richly deserve, this simple trick is what you must observe.
Zecora said.
The pony must be eaten by her and her only, in order to stop this feeling of being lonely. Just a small nibble is all it takes, for the magic from your heart inside to awake.
She finished with a smile as she hitched her bags to her side.
Happy hearthwarming, Mr. Bin. I just know that for you, good things are about to begin.
She spoke as she left, leaving a confused Dusty Bin alone in a store full of angry shoppers. The last rays of golden light were slowly starting to sink below the horizon when Dusty Bin finally made it home. The streets were packed with ponies and other creatures that, when away from the stores, were in a much more joyous mood. They sang, meandered, and generally got in Dusty's way as he'd made the trek home. Of course, the cookie hadn't been too helpful either. As he'd walked along, the cookie shook and bounced around in the box as much as it could. It wished unseen passerby a seasonal greeting of one sort or another. It desperately wanted to escape and join the festivities. However, once he'd arrived at his home, the cookie had settled down. The air was thick at the bin house, and unlike the others, it wasn't decorated. Dusty gave a mournful sigh when he opened the door and stared into the darkened foyer of the house. He flipped the light on by the door, entered, shut the door behind him, and set the package on the table. The chaos of the day had left him drained. All he wanted to do now was take a nice hot shower and relax until his wife got home from hanging out with her friends. He shuddered and slowly began to climb the stairs. Yet, after climbing 3 stairs, he heard the loud creak of the door behind him.
Oh, you're here. I didn't think you would be home this early,
said Jasmine, her voice dripping with disappointment.
I went shopping for hearthwarming,
Dusty said, as he watched his wife quickly make her way from the foyer into the living room.
With what money? You don't have any, Dusty,
Jasmine said, as she walked back to the foyer with 2 suitcases.
Jasmine, what are you doing? Why do you have...
Dusty's voice dropped off as his heart sank into his stomach as the cold feeling returned.
Happy heartwarming! Happy heartwarming!
The cookie shouted joyously in its strange, tiny voice that was thankfully muffled by the box.
I had hoped I would be gone when you came home, and you would just read the damn letter on the bedroom nightstand. That would have been so much easier,
Jasmine said.
I'd ordered a taxi a half hour ago when
She cut herself off from finishing the name, then continued.
I'd ordered it from his home. We're going on a trip. I don't know for how long, and then I'm divorcing you. Simple like that. You don't have much, but when I am done with you, you won't have a pot to boil cabbage in.
Dusty's heart pounded in rage, and it felt like it would burst through his chest. He held his breath and blinked as a fire began to burn within him. He wanted to shout and strike out at her. He wanted to squeeze her neck until she went from ember to blue. But he didn't move. He couldn't. He glared at her, and in that moment, whatever goodwill he had had for his wife was gone.
Happy heartwarming! Happy heartwarming!
The cookie continued to shout. It grew more and more frantic with each cry, while both of the ponies ignored the thin stream of smoke starting to pour out of the box as it fed on something deep inside of Dusty Bin.
Happy heartwarming! What? Happy heartwarming! Happy heartwarming!
It screamed louder. It only shut up when Dusty walked over to the table and slapped his hoof against the top of the box. His anger coursed through him like a river. He picked up the box, and as he did, he realized that the cookie had finally shut up. The pretty paper had blackened, and an eerie calm had washed over the room. In that calm, Dusty Bin realized he hated his wife. He hated everything about her and the way she'd treated him for so long. He'd been civil, but that was over as the oceans of hate swept over him. Dusty glared at Jasmine, who took a half step back in shock, but didn't say anything. Dusty smiled in response. The cookie in the box crooned in a voice growing more perverse the longer Dusty held it. He looked at it briefly, and then back to his wife. In as even of a tone as he could muster, he spoke.
Well, dear wife, I suppose that's it then. I guess I'm licked. I'm sorry that I was such a miserable husband for you.
Jasmine took a step forward, her Cheshire grin returning.
Well, it's too late to be sorry, Dusty, but you were. I deserved better than what you gave me.
Well, I can't make up for that, but before you go, I'd like to give you one more gift as a peace offering.
Peace offering?
Let me keep the house, for old time's sake.
Please, that's the first thing I'll sell.
There were so many things Dusty wanted to say, but couldn't. Instead, he held the box out to her.
For you, my wife.
Let me up, woman! Oh, come on, faithful!
The thing cackled, finally drawing the attention of Jasmine.
What in Celestia's name is that?
She asked and looked suspiciously at the box.
Did you get some singing cat thing? You know I hate those.
Please, open it.
No, it's too flat for a cat. It's probably garbage anyway.
Jasmine began to move toward the door.
Goodbye, Dusty. Happy Hearth's warming.
In a surprising bit of dexterity, Dusty moved in front of the door and held out the gift for her to take. At first, she tried to push past him, but he wouldn't budge. He saw the rage build in her eyes as he stayed in place.
Enough! Get out of my way!
Jasmine screamed and slapped the box out of his hooves. The package tumbled through the air until it hit the wall next to the hat rack. Its lid flew open as the gingerbread pony fell out onto the floor, smearing everything it hit with a light coat of frosting. Dusty saw the thing roll around on the floor. It was different now. It was bigger, darker, and scarier. Its body looked crooked and jagged with cracks running along the cookie. Its buttercream frosting bubbled and dripped off the gingerbread pony, leaving a sugary, red-stained trail. The pair of ponies could only stare as the cookie tried to get up. It took a few tries, appearing disoriented in its attempts to stand on its gingerbread hooves. It moved around in a small circle until it was able to get its bearing. Its melted and smudged gumdrop eyes locked onto Jasmine, who gazed back in utter shock. The gingerbread pony shouted joyously, with a slight undertone of menace in its voice. Its candied and icing mouth grew even wider with insane glee as it finally saw the pony it had been created for. It galloped towards Jasmine with its hooves outstretched, giggling all the way. Jasmine screamed and backed away from the freakish cookie thing that bore down on her.
What did you do?
She cried as it reached her and pulled her down. Dusty shrugged as he watched the cookie wrestle and pin Jasmine to the floor.
Dusty! Get this thing off me!
She pleaded.
Warning!
The gingerbread pony yelled once again. It laughed and sang as it finally reached her head and began to pry her mouth open. It winked at Dusty before cramming itself into the pony's mouth. Jasmine's cry became a muffled choke as her limbs flew to her throat while gingerbread crumbs began pouring from her mouth.
Dusty! What did you do?
Croaked Jasmine before another choking fit overtook her as she writhed on the floor. There was no house in Ponyville that shone brighter for hearth's warming than the house belonging to Dusty Bin. Ponies would approach him when he walked the streets, jokingly commenting that his house could easily be spotted from the moon. They even went so far as to say his house rivaled Twilight's castle in opulent splendor. In response, of course, Dusty would just chuckle and shrug dismissively. It was the holiday, after all, and what better way was there to celebrate than to spread as much cheer as possible. This was especially true for the 4 ponies that had joined him for Hearth's warming dinner that he had so carefully made for them to enjoy. He was conversing with them as the group made their way outside after dinner.
That was awesome, Dad,
said his daughter, Strawberry Field.
I didn't know you were such a great cook.
That was really good,
said his daughter's newest cult friend, a zebra named Vinci, whom she'd met after leaving the commune. The idea of being wife number 4 didn't sit well with her.
Fantastic meal,
said Surprise Bouquet, his mare friend who planted a kiss on his cheek.
As much as I would love to stay longer, I have a train to catch. I promised my brother I would visit the family for the holiday. I'm sorry, sweetie.
Us as well. Da Vinci is doing his first art exhibit in France, and we're just so excited.
Strawberry Field turned to her father and asked,
Are you sure you won't come? It would be good for you to leave the house after Mom, you know.
It's okay, sweetheart. Your mother and I had just grown too far apart. I should have realized it sooner. It would have saved me years of heartache.
Well, you can't blame yourself.
Oh, now, don't worry about it. It's in the past.
They continued to chat and laugh until it was time to go. Once that time arrived, Dusty walked them all to the front door. He hugged his daughter tightly before kissing his mare friend goodbye.
Now, you all have a happy housewarming, and hurry on to the train. It won't wait forever.
If we hurry, I'll tell you how your father and I started dating,
said Surprise.
It was so cute the first time he asked me out.
No sooner had the trio stepped a hoof through the open door had Dusty stopped them.
Wait, have some more of that gingerbread I made. Something for the road. Train snacks are usually awful.
Oh, thank you so much. I've never had cookies that tasted that good before,
said Da Vinci, already salivating at the thought of more gingerbread.
Are you sure that won't be any trouble?
Asked Strawberry.
Nonsense. Just wait right there,
Dusty exclaimed, already making a beeline towards the kitchen. It took but a moment to work his way to the back of the kitchen and into the pantry. It took a moment more to remove the fake shelving, revealing another door that he quietly opened. His ears perked up for any unwanted sounds of company approaching.
Hello, honey,
Dusty said softly to the giant gingerbread cookie. Her candied mouth was still stuck in a silent scream, showing off rows of peppermint teeth and a chocolate tongue made from a brownie. The cookie was covered with a thick, rich, red buttercream frosting and licorice hair. Gumdrop eyes seemed to follow him around the room. Although she was just a cookie, Dusty had the sense she was somehow still very much aware of the world around her, and somehow could still feel everything. Grabbing the kitchen knife he kept hung on a nail by the doorway, he slowly approached his cookie wife with a lopsided grin crawling across his face. He watched her try to scrunch away from him as he got closer. There was just so much of her to eat. It was going to take some time to devour every part of her, as he had been feasting on her for quite some time. Though she had been locked up for a year, she was still as fresh as the day she was made.
We haven't really talked in a while, so I just thought you should know that your father died about a month ago. You were the only heir, so you got the money. It took some finagling on my part, but Surprise Bouquet is just a whiz at signatures.
He quickly ran a stone across the blade as he sharpened it.
Oh, our daughter has a new cult friend. I like him. He's a good kid, and I think he'll take good care of her.
Slowly, Dusty approached the quivering cookie, knife in hoof. He knelt down and slowly marked along her front leg where he was going to cut.
They're all going on a long trip, so I figure they'll need something to eat on the way,
he said, as he slowly began to cut into the cookie's leg. Strawberry filling oozed from the wound.
You know, if it's any consolation, they thought you were delicious at dessert. I can't wait to have them over for the same thing next year.